April 21st, 2026. This is our way of handling the day's Democracy Now! Stories. We do not just repeat headlines. We use each story to show where power is actually moving, where official language stops matching lived reality, and what that means once the headline passes. Story 1. The uncertainty around new US-Iran talks matters less than the structure underneath it. Washington says talks may resume. Iran says the United States violated the ceasefire by seizing an Iranian cargo ship and may resume bombing as soon as the pause expires. The deeper lesson is that diplomacy under active coercion is rarely trust-building. It is bargaining conducted inside threat. When one side keeps the right to escalate at any moment, the table itself becomes part of the pressure system. Story 2. The arrests of military veterans and family members inside the Cannon House building reveal something important about American politics right now. People with direct ties to the armed forces are warning that war damages not only civilians abroad, but the people sent to fight it. The deeper truth is that a war starts to lose legitimacy when even those most closely tied to military service begin treating it as a source of moral injury rather than national defense. Story 3. The new Washington round of Lebanon-Israel talks shows the limits of diplomacy when the damage is already built into the ground. Families are still burying relatives pulled from rubble, and Lebanon is still living with thousands dead, millions displaced, and whole neighborhoods flattened. The deeper lesson is that talks do not reset reality. Once roads, homes, and social trust are broken, diplomacy without repair feels less like peace and more like paperwork layered over wreckage. Story 4. Gaza's reconstruction estimate may be one of the most revealing numbers in the entire file. More than $70 billion and a 77-year setback in human development is not just destruction. It is civilizational reversal. The deeper truth is that modern war is not only about how many people die, it is about how far back in time an entire society can be pushed. Story 5. Amnesty's description of the United States, Israel, and Russia as predators should be read less as rhetoric and more as a structural observation. Across Iran, Lebanon, Gaza, and Ukraine, the pattern is the same. States with superior force are normalizing domination through civilian exposure. The deeper lesson is that impunity spreads by imitation. Once one major power gets away with open disregard for civilian life, others learn from the example. Story 6. Hungary's new prime minister saying he would arrest Netanyahu if he entered Hungarian territory matters because it restores a principle that many governments have tried to hollow out. The point is whether international law applies when it becomes inconvenient. The deeper lesson is that institutions only remain real when someone is willing to enforce them against the powerful. Story 7. Japan's move to relax decades-old limits on weapons exports is not just a regional policy update. It is a sign that war pressure is reorganizing countries far from the immediate battlefield. The deeper truth is that once the global climate shifts toward militarization, states that long defined themselves by restraint begin revising the identity they built after older catastrophes. Security policy then becomes historical memory being rewritten in real time. Story 8. The Cuba talks and the parallel threat of force against the island show how quickly diplomacy can turn into siege logic. Officials meet, discuss oil, and talk about humanitarian pressure, while the threat of military action remains on the table. The deeper lesson is that sanctions and blockades are often presented as policy tools when they are really forms of mass pressure on civilian systems like hospitals, electricity, and food. Story 9. The new record in ICE custody deaths, combined with the widening pattern of detention and deportation pressure, points to something bigger than administrative failure. A system begins to reveal its real nature when death inside it becomes routine enough to blend into the background. The deeper truth is that a bureaucracy can become violent without changing its paperwork. It only has to keep treating people as throughput. Story 10. The Justice Department demand for hundreds of thousands of ballots from Wayne County, alongside FBI moves in Arizona and Georgia, is one of the most serious domestic stories in the file. This is no longer about relitigating one election. It is about turning federal law enforcement into a pressure tool against the mechanics of voting itself. The deeper lesson is that democratic erosion often arrives through procedure, evidence requests, and selective prosecution long before it arrives through open cancellation. Story 11. The reports about Kash Patel's conduct and the resignation of the Labor Secretary point to the same underlying problem. Personal dysfunction becomes a public hazard when loyalty outranks competence. The deeper truth is that systems do not degrade only because bad people enter them. They degrade because standards are lowered to protect alignment with power. Story 12. The facial recognition reporting on Madison Square Garden and the warnings from indigenous leaders at the UN Forum belong together. One story is about a private venue using surveillance to track and ban individuals, even down to bathroom visits. The other is about tech companies scraping knowledge, genetic data, land, and water under the banner of innovation. The deeper lesson is that surveillance and extraction are convergent. The same logic that says a body can be tracked also says a culture, a resource, or a landscape can be mined. Story 13. The Goldman Environmental Prize winners matter because they show the opposite force at work. While states and corporations keep centralizing power, local organizers are still stopping mines, pipelines, and destruction through long, stubborn resistance. The deeper lesson is that concentrated power looks overwhelming until a place-based movement makes it costly. The through line today is simple. Systems under stress do not merely become more aggressive. They become more comfortable treating people, places, and laws as raw material. The deeper story under today's headlines is the fight over whether anything remains protected from that logic.